Welcome to the Period Besties Podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
Happy New Year. Welcome back to our second season of Period Besties Podcast. We are going to chat today about your period so far this year. So you may have had your first period of the year. You may not have yet, depending on where you're falling. But we thought we would do a little bit of a reassurance episode, letting you all know that if it happens to be a little extra this month, that's normal. It happens a lot. In fact, Katie did a great article about this in Reader's Digest. Tell us what you learned.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this for years, about how January, our periods, our clients' periods are showing up differently, right? A little bit more breast tenderness, more cramps, more agitation, all of the PMS symptoms, right? So I brought it to the editor and I was like, listen, I know there's not like an exact study on this phenomenon because there's not a lot of studies on women's health, but there is a trend that I've noticed. Everyone else that does period coaching has noticed, has been talking about. I think we need to write about this. And it was so fun because I actually got to interview one of our favorites, Dr. Laura Bride. Love her, love her, love her. But basically the things that we were talking about and what we were noticing, she also notices in her clinic too. So I thought it was really interesting. And also I also interviewed a dietitian, Kate Morton, who we've had on here, who the owner of Plunkett Wellness, who also has noticed that. And Dr. Snyder, who's been on our podcast too. So it's all kind of like come full circle because this was last year, January, the beginning of 2024. And then we launched the podcast in March and we're able to interview all these amazing ladies. But all three of them, three different types of women's health practices, two doctors, one dietitian, have all noticed this in their practice. So we wanted to bring it to all of you so we can have an open, even more open discussion about why this might be happening and that you are not alone. And it's not just something like you're thinking in your mind because you're exhausted from the holidays and you're like, of course I would feel this way. No, it is literally because, as we've been talking about since the beginning of the year, holidays start at Halloween. More parties, more sugar, more alcohol, less sleep, more social outings. It's going to take its toll. And usually 3 months shows up in that period. Like you might have already noticed maybe your December period being a little bit off, but definitely come January, you'll probably notice some things. So we're going to definitely talk about that today.
If you listened to our podcast at the end of last year and you were doing your tips, you may have a nicer, easier cycle, but you still may find that you're a little bit more fatigued, even if you did all that self-care over the holidays, just because of all of the holidays. And of course, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, the dark, you just naturally have some more fatigue this time of year. We're past the solstice, we're coming out of the darkness, but it's still very short days. So if you're feeling that fatigue or that brain fog or just that little like, oh gosh, I'm not quite on this planet right now feeling, it's that you're just in tune with nature, frankly. That's this time of year. But if you didn't have that opportunity to listen to those podcast episodes and do some of those tips, you may find that it's definitely a harder period this month. And now is the time to clean it up so that February is a little bit easier.
Yes. And I think something we should definitely say is it doesn't mean your whole entire year is going to feel like this, you
Yeah.
know? So even if January is a little bit more atypical and not normal in terms of how you feel, it doesn't mean that it's going to feel like this the whole year. However, if you keep doing the same things, it might still not feel great. So we're going to talk about why this might be happening and then how you can really focus on some good self-care in terms of your diet and movement and sleep lifestyle to kind of help support that. So I think the number one thing is alcohol consumption.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we've talked about this multiple times. We can't really drink like we used to. I actually just don't even bother anymore. And I did notice a huge shift by cutting that out. I really started drinking less and less and less as I kind of like 30 was a big hello moment. I don't think I enjoy how I feel the next day. And then now that I'm going to be 46, I'm like, yeah, I just don't even like how I feel for days after I drink alcohol. It is not my friend. But, you know, social events, so many people going to holiday parties, cocktails, they have fun, festive cocktails. It's just, even if you're not really a drinker, like going out during the holidays and or with family events and things like that, there's just more alcohol consumption. And that definitely interferes with your period because you're taxing the liver. Liver needs a lot of love and support to remove excess toxins, excess hormones. So if it's got alcohol in combination of that, it makes that a little bit more difficult. So I tend to see my clients have more like cramps because of drinking more alcohol.
Yeah, definitely. I see with my people a lot more cramps, a lot more crankiness. Moods are definitely more drastic, and they usually tend towards anger, anxiety, overwhelm, depression. So if you're feeling any of those hallmark inflamed PMS symptoms, for sure, I would say the cramps and the moods are probably the top two things that come up, though the sore breasts, tenderness, brain fog, those things certainly happen as well.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting when I was talking to Laura Bryden about this was that, yes, it's what we just talked about in terms of like alcohol impairs that healthy estrogen clearance with the liver. But she also mentioned that alcohol is bad for periods because it can increase histamine and mast cell activation. It causes a type of inflammation that can worsen headaches, anxiety, breast pain, heavy periods. So there are two things at play here.
Yeah. You might feel like you're having allergies, but it's not allergies. It's actually that histamine reaction in your body. Yeah. I have to say, in my 20s, I was a bartender in New York City. I drank copious amounts of alcohol daily and was perfectly fine and back up on my feet, running around like a crazy person the next day, just fine. And in my 30s, I was coming out of the bartending world and starting my own businesses. So I definitely slowed down a lot. And then in the last couple of years, I certainly have felt like I need to take an antihistamine before I have a drink. Like Thanksgiving, I knew I was having a glass of red wine with Thanksgiving dinner. So in the morning of Thanksgiving, I took an antihistamine so that I could have a red wine with dinner without ending up a sneezy, snuffly, can't breathe mess all night. So even if you're listening to this in your 20s and you think, not me, let me tell you, kid, one day.
One day it all changes.
Yeah.
So, we're not saying don't drink, right? But there are things to do, supporting your liver a little bit more, making sure your blood sugar is balanced before drinking, have water in between drinks.
Yeah.
And just being a little bit more mindful.
We're past all of the celebrations and the New Year's bubbly and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good time to, right? We talked about the anti-resolutions. You might not want to say, I'm never drinking again, but maybe it's a good time to say you're going to do a month or, there's always
dry January.
The dry Januaries. And I did February last year. February, I was like, it's the shortest month of the year. That'll be my month and I'll be sugar-free and booze-free for the month. And so February was my reset month last year. But this year I actually had a fairly mild holiday season. So I was like, I need to bring the sugar down a bit. I will freely admit that the sugars have cropped up. So I certainly will be taking the sugars down. But as far as everything else is concerned, I did really well this holiday. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's not a bad period. In fact, my worst one, I think might have been November last year was a doozy, but after that we've been pretty okay. And I consider my period as like the canary in the coal mine, right? Like with the endometriosis, if I go offline too far, I just get smacked around. So if it's not terrible, I feel like it's
Yeah. Oh my God. My December, my period was 8 days early. I got the stomach bug. We moved. So looking back, like that was definitely, and not even necessarily like bad in terms of like cramping or breast tenderness, because I've had more breast tenderness in the past year. It was more like I had zero tolerance for anything and anybody.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's those moods.
Yeah, the mood was really bad. I was like, ooh, I'm being a little scary. I got the stomach bug on a Monday, got my period on a Wednesday, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm done for the year.
I was like, oh, poor
Hello, I'm ready for January. Then thank God we're in the new year.
I know. I got your text and I turned to Chris and I said, poor Katie, that's what my period used to be like every month for like 20 years. It was like having the stomach flu and your period at the same time for 3 days straight. So I was like, oh, poor Katie. I know exactly what she's going through right now.
Yeah, like you got nothing left.
No, you don't. So for those listening, pay attention to your cycle. Like tune in right now to where you are in your cycle, what phase you may be in, how are you feeling in that phase, what day are you, what's it feel like? And when you get your period, how's the blood? Is it heavier than normal or lighter? Is it darker or lighter? Is it more clots? Noticing those kinds of things can really help you understand what's going on and help you go, oh boy, something's out of whack. This is way heavier than normal. Or, oh gosh, I have a lot more clots than I normally do. I need to do some self-care, eat some more, probably fiber, fresh green, something to that effect is a likely candidate. And cravings. What kind of cravings are you having? And taking note of those, because I know I'm having sugar cravings, and that means it's time to rein in the sugar.
Yes. And something else to think about too is because of the sugar, the alcohol, the lack of sleep, right? Getting that blood sugar. I know we talk about this every single episode, but literally this is the most important thing to focus on, especially in the new year. Like we did the whole anti-resolution, right?
Right.
This is really about how can you support and nourish your body. And the best thing to do is eat.
Yes.
Eat more protein, eat more fiber, eat more healthy fats, drink the water. You don't need to jump on a diet, a trend. Just balance your blood sugar. Just eat in a way that supports your body. If you're craving tons and tons of sugar, that might mean that you're still not getting enough protein, right? If you're craving lots of fatty foods, you might need to eat a little bit more healthy fats. Just really pay attention. This is a great time to start charting and writing down what you're craving, how you're feeling. Good observation time. But honestly, like that blood sugar, because of everything we've been talking about, that is going to be off the most, especially if you've been traveling and especially different time zones, getting back into the new year.
Yeah. And if you're dealing with any stressful situations, family, life, jobs, whatever that was going on, it's like the TikTok trend that was going around at the end of last year. We listen, but we don't judge. You need to just know your cravings. We listen, but we don't judge. I want junk food. But you have to play, you have to play the game with yourself. So listen, but don't judge. Listen to those cravings, see what they have to say. And then, as always, one of my favorite tips, something that I talk to with every single client, especially at this time of year, is start eating your fermented foods. It's one of the best sugar craving crumblers. The fermented food repopulates your gut with the healthy bacteria, which kills off the bacteria that's screaming for sugar. So it's not going to end your sugar craving immediately, but it will help to repopulate your gut with that healthy bacteria, and it will help reduce those sugar cravings. So one of my favorite tips that I still practice myself to this day, and then I tell all of my clients, is when you have a sugar craving, go have a couple forkfuls of kraut out of your refrigerator or whatever ferment that you like that you have on hand. And if you don't, go get one. And then have a couple forkfuls of that. And then if you still have an intense craving, go get some dark chocolate or something that will satisfy that sweet tooth a bit, but isn't like a slice of pie or a fistful of cookies.
No, definitely. I even find, because we all have moments where like your body just needs more and more sugar, right? I find just eating some sauerkraut or kimchi cuts it off
Yeah.
almost, because it's such a drastically different taste
Yeah.
in your mouth. Like it just changes what I'm craving and all of it. I'll do that often. I love it. Such a good tip. It really, really is helpful. It might not stop it for the whole week, but in that moment, sometimes if you're just like, I need more,
Yeah.
get that fermented food in and it just kind of dulls it.
Yeah. It makes such a difference. And why not kick off the year? We're in January. Let's start a healthy habit for the year. Let's have our fermented foods. Let's put something in the refrigerator, whether you're making it yourself or you're buying something. But let's stock a refrigerator with something fermented and delicious and just keep it around and just make it a priority of every day having a scoop of something. Remember that your ferments aren't your meal. They're a condiment. Like miso, soy sauce, sauerkraut, kimchi, all of those things. If you go to a traditional restaurant, they come out in a tiny little bowl. They're not the main course, right? It's a little extra that goes with it. So just having a forkful while you're standing in the refrigerator, deciding what to have for lunch or dinner is perfect. That's all you need. You have a forkful twice a day or something like that, and you're doing much better than like 99% of Americans. So
I love doing kimchi and sauerkraut with my eggs.
Oh yeah.
It just gives so much more flavor and taste. That's an easy kind of way for me to get that in first thing in the morning. Cause sometimes I wake up and crave sugar, like something sweet. And that kind of helps me, especially the new year coming off my mom is an amazing baker. So she just loves to make all these cookies. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So come now in January, okay, get that fermented food in, balance my blood sugar. I still have my chocolate, but it's definitely helping. I love that. Something else to think about too is because of the shorter days as well, and definitely talk to your doctor about this, but if your vitamin D is too low, you'll also be craving sugar. It's harder, especially vitamin D helps regulate your appetite. So if your vitamin D is too low, it can be harder to even curb those cravings. So that's something you should talk to your doctor about. The new year, instead of waiting till December to get your physical, maybe we move up our physicals in January, February, so that you can set yourself up for the year and you're getting your blood work done if you can. But if your vitamin D is too low, you just don't want to over supplement with vitamin D. So you don't want to just start taking it out of nowhere if you don't know what your levels are, unless your levels are very low and you need to get that up. But again, don't take supplements without talking to your doctor, especially if you're on a new medication, but vitamin D is essential.
Yeah.
Especially in winter.
Oh yeah. I started taking, 5 times the recommended daily dosage of vitamin D. And I had been doing that for a year and I went and got my blood work done and they were like, yeah, everything's normal. And I was like, oh my God, I'm taking so much vitamin D. You're telling me it's normal? Okay, great.
Yeah. It takes a lot to get that up.
Yeah.
You just want to be mindful. You don't want to be over like 85, 90. You just want to be mindful about that. But it's not like you're going to take it for a week and it's going to go really high.
No, it was just like because we both did that. Chris and I, we were on the road, we were traveling. It was end of the COVID panini times, but you still weren't plane traveling as much, right? So I don't know, it was like 2021, maybe 2022. And so we were like, we're going to take a ton of vitamin D because we were driving back and forth across the country every month to visit his kid. Okay, we're going to take just a ton of vitamin D because all the studies had said vitamin D seemed to help reduce the risks and blah, blah, blah. So we're like, let's just chug vitamin D like it's our breakfast. And then, and then we went and had our blood work done and we both came back perfectly within the realm of normal. And we were like, oh my God, how deficient were we before?
I think it's like 98% of all humans are in vitamin D.
Yeah.
Which is why
taking it. I was taking the recommended dosage, but we cranked
totally, but it's still too low. Yeah. Especially because we're not outside. No. I mean, I always joke like way, way back in the day, right? We didn't wear clothes. We were running outside all day.
Yeah.
Cave air. I'm sure we had enough vitamin D back then, but even when we go outside now, we're covered, sunscreen. It's just more challenging to get it from the sun.
It is. It absolutely is. And keep in mind that I know Katie and I have talked about this a million times, but let's just do it again. Most people are undernourished, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those cravings are coming because you might be eating enough calorie wise, but you're not actually getting the nutritional density that we need in food. So if you're feeling cravings, junk food, salt, sugar, junky fats, whatever it is, you're undernourished in some way, shape, or form. So make sure that you're getting those healthy, whole foods. So you're getting all of the nutrition that you need.
Yeah. And our hope for all of us this year is just to really focus on nourishment. And I feel like we both see this with our clients when we really just help all of us nourish our bodies. So many of these symptoms that you might be feeling with your period this month will slowly go away when we start just nourishing and eating enough, right? So many of us are still in that mindset of calorie in, calorie out type situation. And it's not helping our periods at all.
No, it's not. It's an unfortunate thing. I have this battle of healthy fats with everyone and every client I've ever had. I can't think. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I've had a few clients who I didn't have to have this battle with. It's a little hyperbolic, but for the most part, the battle of you eating fat I know a lot of us grew up in the era of fat-free and everything, but it's tough to rewire that deep-seated belief that fat is the worst thing. Fat makes you fat, right? So no woman wants to eat fat because then they're going to get fat and then they lose all worth in the patriarchy. So
yeah, which is why I like to call them with my clients some happy mood foods, because I think just even hearing the word fat sometimes, even though it's healthy fat. So if you're trying to think and shift your mindset this new year, happy mood foods, because they actually help with your mood. They help you feel a little bit happier. They help your brain with memory recall. So if you're not having an easy time recalling things, like get some more fat for your brain.
Sure. I love that. I haven't heard you say that before, and I think it's genius.
Yeah. Happy mood foods, like go for it. I eat avocado a day. I have friends literally every time they see an avocado, they like laugh and sometimes take pictures and send them to me. They're like, every time I see an avocado, I just think of you. I'm like, awesome. Eat it.
Good. And then eat avocado.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some cute too. Like the cartoon avocados. Like I love it. I love the avocados.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember after my concussion in the very beginning of 2020, I craved fat, which made sense to me, right? There was brain damage. Yeah. It was not my first concussion. It was like my fourth concussion, but over the span of my life. But I remember reading your brain is almost entirely built of fat. Other than the sheath on the outside, your brain is fat, and it's the neurons moving back and forth through the fat, and you need the fat for them to be able to connect, to work, to zoom to each other. So you really need a healthy fats for that. And when I had that brain injury, I woke up one morning and I was like, I want deep fat fried butter. I had a craving for butter cooked in butter with some butter on top. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this craving, but obviously I need it. And I have a month, maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't remember anymore, but I had fat. I cooked everything in butter. I ate everything with olive oil. I had avocados on everything. I just ate fat like it was my job. And it felt so good. And then one day I woke up and was like, I need dark greens. The fat craving just was done, and I needed really dark, rich kale, dandelion, like bitter greens. And I was like, oh, all right, we've repaired the fat, I guess. And now we're in need of the nutrition in dark greens. It was just an amazing process going through that healing brain injury. But yeah, fat was a big one. And so to this day, I keep thinking, well, if I want my brain to work well, I need to make sure that it is fueled properly. And it's like 99% fat. So I'm going to go get some olive oil for that salad and an avocado, or I'm going to cook it with some grass-fed butter.
I think back to being a teenager and there's no fat.
Oh, yeah.
And my parents would always, they still remember that, like, you would leave the house and have to come back 3 times because you kept forgetting things.
Yeah.
And now as I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, it's because I wasn't eating any fat. Because there was no, I was in New Hampshire in the 90s in high school, and there was no avocados. There was like we think we might have had olive oil, but like it wasn't a thing to eat fat. So
everything was fat free in our house. In fact, my parents' house is still all fat free. So
yeah, I mean, it's hard to change a cultural mindset that's been so ingrained in all of us, but nourish, nourish, nourish. And if you are ready to join us and really nourish your body this year, and you are in your late 30s, 40s, and you might be going through perimenopause, or you might be going through it sometime soon, come join us in late February for our workshop. We're going to do take 2. So if you weren't able to join us in the fall, we're going to be doing our Nourish and Flourish, eating well through perimenopause. And we had such amazing feedback from the women that did join us that we decided to run it again. And we'd love to have you join us and really fix your period and support your period and help you with all of these big hormonal shifts that you might be noticing. So take the time in the new year to really notice and chart and see how you're feeling, and then come join us and we'll help you.
Yeah, absolutely. We put some of those testimonials on the page, actually. So if you click the link that's in the show notes that takes you to the Nourish and Flourish page, you can even read some of the feedback and comments we got from the ladies who were there. So definitely join us. It was a good time, and we're going to do it again in February. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great. And you get a ton of freebies with it as well. So
yeah,
it's a really worthwhile investment for your health and your future. And you get so much stuff to take away and use practically that it's a really useful workshop, not just something you show up to, you feel good, and then you leave and you never do again.
Yeah, like we're giving you recipes, we're doing meal planning, we're giving you a Cravings cheat sheet, like so many things. Plus, I just loved the conversations that we had with the group of women that joined us, because everybody was really open and we all learned from each other, which is why we love being in community with each other and helping support you all.
Yeah, it's going to be a year of community for sure this year. So hope to see you there. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will see you back here next week. And in the meantime, go nourish yourself. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.
That should be our tagline. Go nourish yourself.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bresek Wellness. Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties Podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bresek, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebresek.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.